Most people, I think, know that we have 5 kids.
We do have 5 kids.
Today, on this episode, we want to talk about and kind of think back to what it was like to go from no kids to one kids, from none to one.
Right. None to one.
None to one.
And that's a big step.
It's a huge step.
That's a big step.
I think we need to start out by saying, so that people understand this, much bigger step, deal, process to go from none to one than it was to go from 2 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, much bigger adjustment.
Right.
So if you're out there and you look at our family and you go, well, it must be easy for them because they have all those kids. It must have always been easy. And you're frustrated because it's not easy for you and you have one child and you're trying to figure this out. It was a massive life adjustment.
Yeah, so many friends who just have one child tell me all the time, I don't understand how in the world you have done this 5 times. How have you done this with 5 kids?
But I think that's the secret. You don't do it with 5 children.
Don't.
You do it with one.
Right.
And then 2's a little different, 3's a little different, so on and so forth. So so that's what we're going to talk about today, from none to one.
Yeah, we're continuing this series, and our hope is that at every step and season of our life, as we look back on it and we think through the things that helped us through those times or the lessons that we learned in those times, that people who are facing those same seasons of their own life might be able to glean a little wisdom from that, learn from our mistakes, learn from our successes, and just to be able to share and testify to what the Lord has done in our life. There's a big part of Scripture that talks about taking time to speak of the good things that God has done and to praise Him for what He's done. And so when we look at our own story and the different seasons that we've experienced up to this point, there's a lot of praise that we can give for what God has done and the ways that He has invested in us through His Word, through other people, and allowed us to learn some lessons that we want to share with other people.
And you, just to give people some kind of context, so when we finished up last time, it's somewhere around 2007, would you say? We're somewhere in there, 2006, 2007. And we've been married now for 4, going on 5 years. We mentioned this in an earlier episode, but we kind of said from the beginning we would like to have 5 years together if the Lord would give us that before we had a child. And those were great years. We had those were years where we really got to know one another, and I think they really laid a great foundation for our marriage. Not that again, none of this we're saying is the way that you have to do it.
Sure.
I think for some couples, waiting 5 years is probably a mistake because we were very young when we got married, and so we've been able to have a large family and a lot of family time. But had we been older, maybe we wouldn't have been able to do that. But anyway, we waited 5 years, and then, like I said, people said, well, you won't be able to do it that way. Well, it timed out exactly that way. So we were married in 2003, August. Jackson was born in September of 2008. So it was 5 years plus 1 month when Jackson was born. So that kind of gives everybody a timeline of what we're talking about. And, of course, Jackson is 16. He is a junior now in high school, and he is we're like in college mode, trying to figure out where he's going to go to college. So that's kind of that gives everybody an idea of timeline. So from none to one, let's think through the decision to have kids or not to have kids, if the Lord would allow us, was never really a decision for us.
Right.
We knew we wanted to have children.
Right.
How many children did you think you would want to have?
So, thinking back as a kid, girls think about these things even when they're children of, how many kids do I want, what I want to name them, all of that. So I remember wanting a boy and a girl, wanting 2 kids, and that was the family that I came out of. I have one brother, and so I just remember thinking that's just kind of that's the goal.
That's the normal.
That's the normal. Yeah.
It's really funny because that's kind of, that was built into me. I did not sit around and think, about having kids, but I did just assume I'd grow up, get married, and have 2 kids. That's kind of, and in our era, that was kind of the American dream.
Yep.
2 kids, a dog, and a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
Right.
That was like the American dream. And so it's just kind of built in that, okay, you'll have a couple of kids. So you and I had certainly talked about having children. We had talked about how many we expect. We talked about all those things in premarital counseling. And I do think we said probably a couple of kids, but Neither of us were really hard set on that. Now, what about, we did talk about you, and would you stay at home? Would you work? And so let's think through that.
Yeah, so we definitely realized early on in our marriage that it was important for me to be at home with our children while they were young. We wanted to, if at all possible, for me to be the one to care for them in their early years and not have to send them to daycare, and to be able to be the one at home with them during those first early years. And I don't even remember not feeling that way. I remember always feeling like I wanted to at least be home with them, if at all possible financially, those first few years. And so we both agreed on that. We both wanted that. But then that really quickly changed. And we'll talk a little more about that as we get on to that part of the discussion. But
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to give people the idea that we had these discussions.
Yeah.
And we had talked about how many kids we had. And I know it was after we were married that we talked about the whole stay at home thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was something we ever said, well, we're absolutely against it. I know that wasn't the case,
Right.
and now we've had this kind of conversion to stay-at-home mom.
Right.
It just kind of came up in conversation. Some point in the 5 years, we said, yeah, it would be good for Lindsay to stay at home, until all the kids are back to school age, which is kind of interesting because you would still be at home.
Right.
If that was the plan, you would still be at home.
That's exactly right.
We'd be approaching the time where you would go back into the classroom.
Yeah, because
But
our
that-
youngest is
and
just
so
5.
I think I just want people to know that's not how we had it pictured. We just didn't picture our life being the way that it is now.
We didn't. But when we did decide that, it was important for us, if at all possible, for me to be the one to stay home and, primarily care for them those early years, because of that, we, from the beginning, made some really intentional decisions financially about how we would live our lives and what we would spend and what we wouldn't spend. And, we would not stretch ourselves beyond our means because we knew that my income was only going to be temporary.
And you, for at the moment we decided that, I mean, you were the breadwinner.
Right.
And I'm the provider. God's given me that role, and it's my job to provide. But at the time, your paycheck was a lot bigger than my 3 combined paychecks, how many
Yeah.
ever jobs that I had at any given time. You had that steady paycheck. I was a bivocational pastor. I was working my way through seminary, and I had a couple of other jobs. And so, your job, your paycheck was the one. And so when we made that commitment, though, we said, okay, we're not the kind of people who can stick back a bunch of cash over the next 3 or 4 years, and we just don't make enough money to do that. So we're going to have to change. Our lifestyle is going to have to reflect the fact that we don't make much money, and that's going to kind of be the way that we live our lives. So that was the decision that we made. I would strongly encourage couples to not write off the stay-at-home mom thing.
Yeah.
I see this a lot. Well, it just can't be done. You need a two income household, and the truth is, if you're 15 years into a 2 household income, you've probably adjusted to the point where you can't afford those cutbacks. It would make drastic life changes. Some of them you may not be able to make. You might be stuck in a mortgage that you can't really get out of with the interest rates where they are and all those kind of things. But if you're starting out, don't tie your hands. Don't tie your hands, especially men. This is an area where you need to lead spiritually. You need to protect your wife from that moment when she says, I feel like I need to stay at home with the kids. You need to protect your wife from having to look at her and say, we just can't make that happen.
Right.
And that protection starts very early in the marriage. Avoiding debt, not living beyond your means, living below your means, so that if you were to lose some of your income, you'd still be okay.
And I'll say, even to the wives, it's really important, as husbands are to protect us and help lay that out. It's really important for the wives to be willing to sacrifice the things that they want in order to make that happen. So, if you are feeling a call to primarily care for your children and to stay home and do that, that might mean a smaller house. That might mean reducing down to 1 vehicle. That might mean not getting to have the clothes that you want or the shoes that you want or the extracurricular things that you've been used to. And so just really being willing to look at it, count the cost, and say, what is this worth to me to be the primary caregiver for my children, to be the main disciple maker of my kids and the one who's there for those moments, investing in them.
And I know that there are a lot of women who desire to do this, and you might have some guilt about it. I feel guilty for this. Don't feel guilty about wanting to be the primary caregiver. That is a lie. I mean, this is not an episode about stay-at-home moms, but it could very well be. The enemy, think about it, the enemy has lied to you. If you believe that it's wrong for you to want to be a mother, it's wrong for you to want to be the primary person who cares for those children day in and day out, who is with them most of the day. What a lie Satan has told you, that somehow that's wrong for you to feel that way. It's also not wrong for families that, mom's got to go to work and you've got to figure out some other situation. But my goodness, it's not wrong of you to have a desire to actually be the one who cares for your children.
Right. So, kind of looking at the chronology of everything, we go into the end of 2007, and you are working on your doctorate at Southern Seminary. And the way that program worked, it was a non-residential program. And so you would go up a couple times a year to be able to do some intensive classwork. And then some of those times I got to join you, but when it was in the middle of the school year, I was teaching. So I wasn't able to join you during those times.
So usually I had to go up twice a year. You got to come during the summer.
Right. I would go in the summer times, and then you would, when the January time, you'd be on your own. So you went up to Louisville, Kentucky for your workshops for a couple of weeks, and I stayed back
And
home.
this was January.
January
So
of 2008.
this was January January. It was the January of the year.
The January.
The January.
Yes. And so I start becoming suspicious that I might be pregnant. And you were gone. And so I went to the local Walmart to buy a pregnancy test. And this was the Walmart where your grandmother would have shopped. And I remember being so nervous because I thought, if I run into her and she sees that I have a pregnancy test,
it's over.
It's over. Everybody's going to know.
And it's not just that my grandmother might see you there. It's you had kind of in some ways come into my after your big city life up on the mountain.
Yeah.
You had come into my small town world where everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows that you are Elmer's grandson's wife, even though Elmer had been gone to heaven now for 10 years. It didn't matter. Everybody still knew that's who you were. So This is small town Walmart. Any of 30 people that you don't know could have seen you buying that pregnancy test, and it would have been all over.
Yeah. So I bought the test, got home, nobody saw me. And I remember taking the test, and of course, it feels like an eternity before you see the answer on the test, and seeing that positive sign on the test. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And
it's real.
It is real. And I called my mom because I was a little bit worried, because I thought, oh man, we're on a 5-year plan. And this is we were about ready to begin actually like trying intentionally to have a baby, but we were not necessarily expecting to be pregnant quite at that point. And so, I was just nervous about how you would respond and would we feel ready for this. And so I called my mom and I was crying and I was like, I just took a pregnancy test and it's positive. What does that mean? And
it means you're having a baby.
Well, right. She's like, it's very rare that it would be positive and it not, be the case. But she's like, it's going to be okay. And so, I didn't want to tell you over the phone. So
but now hold on.
So I composed myself best
before
I
you
could.
get to this phone call. So I was there in Louisville with my cohort that I was going through the doctoral program with, and Bill and Elizabeth Mitchell. Bill Mitchell was in the cohort as well, and so like anytime I could grab with Bill, I always tried to. He was such an influence on me, and I just I admired him so much, and so I just wanted to kind of get all the wisdom I could get from him. So it was kind of a rare opportunity I had where it was just the two of us. I think we went out to dinner and like nobody else could go. And I know I rode with him and I rode to the place and back. So I had like a good 3 hours with Bill. And so I started asking him in preparation for months from now, maybe even a year from now, when we might start trying to have kids. I started asking him a lot of questions about parenting, and I started asking him questions about how did you teach your kids about money, and how did you teach your kids about missions, and how did you make your kids, how is it that your kids are so respectful, how that they can have conversations with adults and it's not awkward.
And that's what I was going to say. We've spent a lot of time around their family where we saw those things about his kids and about the way that their family interacted that just really impacted us. And so I would just say, as a quick side note here, when you see a family that is operating in a way that impresses you or that impacts you, and you think, man, I would really love for my kids to turn out like that or to be like that, or I'd love to be like that as a parent. Stop and talk to those people and
Right.
find out, what are you doing that your family interacts in this way, or that you guys are able to do this. And that's true about them, is that they were just so impactful to us in the way that their children stood out as being exceptional young men and women, children even, and how they just stood out to be such wise parents.
And it was just, I think it was just God's providence in that I got to spend that time with Bill and kind of thinking through those things that really prepared me for the phone call. So you call me not like out of the ordinary, hey, we need to talk. Just I'm calling, my class is over, it's time to check in.
It was
You
just a
know,
check-in
just
call.
just the check-in
It was
call.
actually, I was about to leave to go to church that night for Wednesday night church. So it was just check-in call. And I don't know, maybe you could tell a little something out of my voice. I'm not sure, but you just asked me straight up out of the blue, babe, are you pregnant?
Yeah, I had an intuition. I mean, I don't know, I don't remember to this day what caused me to ask you that question, but and you weren't talking about it. There was no discussion about, hey, I might be pregnant, and there was no reason for me to think you were pregnant. And so that makes it,
Right.
yeah,
I know exactly why you asked me the
I
question, but
do
I don't
too.
want to talk
I
about
do
it in front of
remember
everybody.
now why I asked you that question. Okay. And just let me be clear that this was not something, again, we weren't planning on this, and I don't want to go into too many details, but there was not necessarily a reason for me to think that you were pregnant.
Yeah, it was just fun banter,
It was,
probably.
yeah, it was just fun banter. And so, well, but I still, like, I had an intuition, something in the phone call. I just knew, I just had huh. So I asked, are you pregnant? Now, in fairness, I ask that question all the time.
Yes, you would ask that question
I
all the
do
time.
just, and still to this day, I'll ask that question. And so,
Well, sometimes you actually would just say, "Are you that away?"
are you that away? Because that's what my grandmother, who is in heaven with Jesus now,
Yes.
she refused to say the word pregnant
Yes.
most of her life. And so she would say, well, she's that away.
Right.
So, are you that away? But
Right.
this time I ask you, are you pregnant?
Yes. And I just kind of froze for a second.
You didn't say anything.
Like,
And I was shocked that you didn't say anything.
right.
Because I was like, well, she's supposed to automatically say no.
Right. And then I did say, well, would you really want me to tell you over the phone? And then at that point,
Which is, you might as well say
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And so I had to, first of all, I was very excited, but I was also nervous. I was all of a sudden, this huge responsibility comes on you.
instantly numbers start swarming through your
Yeah,
mind.
like money starts
Yeah.
throwing, like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Even though we had made the adjustments, and I start thinking through all the things, and I start thinking through everything we've got to do. To me, there is now a countdown, a 9-month countdown on, which I was clueless at the time that we're already well into that 9-month
Right.
countdown. But I was thinking, okay, I have 9 months to change the world.
Mhm.
Like, we're about to be responsible for another human being, and like it was not panic, it was focus.
Mhm.
It was like there is a showdown coming in 9 months, and I've got to prepare for this showdown.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I was like, oh, that is great. Like, I tried my best. I wanted to be excited. I wanted to make sure that you knew everything was going to be okay.
Right.
Like, this is great. Like, I just tried to go overboard with
You
it.
told me, I wish you could see how big my smile is.
Yes, I wish you could see how big
That
I'm
was
smiling.
before FaceTime. So.
I'm so excited. This is going to be fantastic. Everything's going to be great. I remember that phone call.
And you told me to buckle us both up on the way to church.
Yes.
You told me that.
Take care
Mm-hmm.
of both of you. So little Jackson was on his way,
Yeah.
and we did. We had 9 months to prepare. So what all did we do in those 9 months to prepare?
So I think a couple of things that we did were, we did ask for advice from people that we really respected and tried to gain wisdom that way. I had a cousin who had just had some babies and twins. And so she kind of helped me on, like, what do you need for a baby? Those kinds of things, practical things.
They were a big help on scheduling as well. So
Yes.
because they had twins, they had to really work hard on scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were a big help with us in thinking through like a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Elizabeth Mitchell, who our daughter Elizabeth is named after,
Yeah.
was really helpful in that as well.
Yeah, that was probably the most pivotal preparation moment for me. It was about a month and a half before Jackson was due, and
We were back
we were
in
back in Louisville for your
and
workshop
you were
that
there
summer.
you were there with us.
Yeah, and so she and I got to have a conversation, and of course she was so excited for us, and she just asked me about my hopes and my plans for if I wanted to nurse the baby or not, or if I had any idea on how I wanted to handle scheduling or routine or any of that. And I said, well, I really hoped to nurse, but I just guess I'd kind of figure things out. I really didn't have a plan. And she recommended On Becoming Baby Wise to me, the book On Becoming Baby Wise. And they had, like we said before, they had 5 children. And she told me she did not find out about that book until their 5th child. And
Oh, wow.
she said, I wish I had known these things from the beginning. And I just thought, wow, a mother who would have a 5th child and think I have something to learn.
Hmm.
I want to learn from that person. If they are still teachable, still learning, still growing, and if they found something at number 5 that made such a big difference from 1, 2, 3, and 4, I want to know what that is.
This is not an episode about stay-at-home moms. It's also not an episode about Baby Wise. We could do an episode on Baby Wise. I think we do need to say we absolutely love Baby Wise. We're all in 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But we also realize, Moses was not a Baby Wise baby. Jesus was not a Baby Wise baby.
Although I do think Moses probably did cry it out.
He probably did cry it out. Yeah, probably in that basket. Nobody's coming over there to take care of him. But so we are not because there are people.
Yes, it has a cult following.
There is a cult following, and if you don't do Baby Wise, then you don't love Jesus. Like there's that group of people. We are not that group of people. But I will say, Baby Wise aside, one thing that was important to us was that Jackson would not become the center of our home.
Yeah.
And that Jackson would be a part of the family, just like I'm part of the family, you're part of the family. He has his specific needs, and yes, his needs are higher priority because of his age and his developmental stage, but he's just part of the family.
Yeah.
And we're adding him to an already healthy family, and Jesus is going to be the center of our home. Mm-hmm. And our marriage is going to be the center of our relationship. And Jackson is going to come and be part of our family, and we're going to raise him, and one day he's going to leave his father and mother. We're going to give him away, and we're going to encourage him as he leaves to go start his own family. Mm-hmm. And that's a very important concept. And regardless of whether you do Baby Wise or you're a stay-at-home mom or mom works or whatever setup you have going on, you've got to get to the point where you realize that baby cannot be the center because they are very cute, they're very demanding, and you get a lot of emotional reward from caring for that baby, mm-hmm. especially moms.
Yeah.
And so you've got to make the decision that child will not be the center of everything.
Yeah, and when she recommended that book, immediately I ordered it. It came in, I read it very quickly, and it was just perfect timing because like I say, it was just before he was born, so everything was really fresh on my mind. And we went to our parents and we said, this is something that we really want to try. And we gave them each a copy of the book, and we said, it may be a total flop, it may not work, but we really want to try it, and we really would love to ask for you guys to support us in this. And so just so that you know what we're doing here, we want to give you a copy of the book so you can kind of understand why we might be doing some things that seem a little bit different. And so they did. They both read the book, and were both as supportive as you could imagine a grandparent could be.
Grandmother Allen, not
Grandmother
so much.
Allen was not very supportive.
Again, with Jesus, now with Jesus,
Yes.
Grandmother Allen was not a fan of the babies crying.
She wasn't. So I guess we can kind of fast forward a little bit. So when, Jackson's born, everything goes well. And I think we should tell the story of how his first week of life was really hard for
There are
us.
some other things I want to talk about before he was born.
Okay,
but,
well, let's do that, and we'll come back to when he was born.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to I don't know if you remember this or not. We had a cruise that we had already bought.
We did.
And it's like one of the few times that we bought the insurance on the cruise,
Mm-hmm.
and we had planned the cruise. We found out we were pregnant you were pregnant, and we've got this baby on the way. And so immediately I say, we can't go on that cruise. We need the money. We need to get the money back and use it to prepare. And I remember one of the other couples we talked to, Mark and Kay Weipert. Do you remember that
Oh
conversation?
yeah, they said go.
They said, go on the cruise. Whatever you do, go on the cruise. It was like, this is your last moment of freedom. Go on the
Yeah.
cruise. We actually did not go on the cruise. Mark and Kay's situation a little different than ours. They went from 0 to 3 or 4
3.
Overnight.
Yeah.
It happened because of the foster and eventually adopting situation. They went from no children to 3 children overnight. And so for us, it wasn't quite as drastic of a change as that. But we didn't go on the cruise.
No, but
We've
we
been
did
on-
go to Savannah.
And we've been on several cruises since. So, and we got the money back and used it. The only debt we had was my truck payment. And so we doubled up and tripled up and did whatever we could. We got that out of the way. So we went into this not making very much money, but also not having any debt, so that we were ready to say goodbye to your last paycheck. And so we said goodbye to your last paycheck, and we got to the point where the last few paychecks of yours, we were putting either toward debt retirement to pay off that truck, or just kind of putting it back in savings so that we weren't actually living on it. And that's kind of how we made the transition. We just pretended that your paycheck didn't exist, other than these things we wouldn't need after the baby was born.
Yeah.
And so we kind of made the adjustment before he was born that this is what we would live off of. So, and listen, I'm not going to say how much I was making, because for a few reasons, but if I told you what I was making, you would probably say, okay, I thought you said that was a full-time salary, because I came on staff at a church that was a full-time church. In all of this, I had been a bivocational pastor, and I took a job at a full-time church. And they were very good to our family in a lot of ways, but they just weren't able to pay what other churches might be able to pay. And so the salary was not necessarily a huge salary. So the reason I stress that is because we did this in a time when it was really a very, very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And we were paying a mortgage and renting a house, because the church we were serving was in a different part of the county. And so we were basically paying 2 mortgages in order to be in the area that we were doing ministry in. And so it was very tight, but the Lord provided. I never look back on that time and think about, I don't know how we were going to make it.
Right.
There were certainly tight times and stressful times, but we always knew the Lord was going to take care of us.
Yeah.
He always did.
Yeah.
So anything else before the preparation? I mean, I don't know what. We did all the stuff. We painted
yeah.
rooms and bought
Right.
furniture. And what was the thing that you got that you didn't know you would need, that you absolutely 100% were thankful you had after the baby was born?
A few things. I think one of them was a breast pump, which probably don't want to talk a whole lot about, but I didn't really realize how helpful that would be in the nursing process and milk production, and like an electronic one.
Yes.
But
that was not baby number 1. That didn't come along. My dad bought that for you, I think, with baby number 2.
No, it was baby number 1, because when we were in the hospital the second time, which we'll talk about in a minute, was when the issue came up. So
Okay.
I've had several over the years, and he probably bought a second one for me.
Okay.
But, we can talk more about that in a minute. But probably that, and the stroller car seat combo, like how helpful that was just to have the click in, click out thing. That was really great.
Angel monitor.
The angel monitor. Yeah.
So this is something that if you're just now preparing to have a baby, or if you've just had a baby, we're big proponents of get that baby in its own bed from the time you come home from the hospital. We didn't do that with Jackson. We put him in a bassinet. We never put him in our bed. Our children, to this day, 16 years later, our children have never slept in our bed. They don't know what it's like to sleep in our bed. They have only slept in our room a handful of days on those early days. And then with, I think, either Meredith or Sawyer, we just started saying, well, it doesn't make any sense to put them in our room because we might not wake up if they stop breathing. But if we put them in the crib with that angel monitor and they stop breathing, we're going to know it.
Yeah.
So the angel monitor, it monitors their breathing, and if they stop breathing, it sounds an alarm. Now, the alarm will sound for other reasons. And do you remember the like the first time.
Yeah, when
That
the alarm went off and we both
terrifying.
go running.
I
And
mean, that is like your heart drops,
Yeah.
and it's just because he's on the edge of the crib.
yeah,
You know, it was as he had gotten older and he could kind of wiggle, and he
scoodle
had
it.
wiggled his way to the edge of the crib. But I mean, it's like the alarm goes off, and I mean, we both just out of bed sprinted to the room, and
Yeah. But that gave us such peace of mind
It
to be
did.
able to really rest well when the baby was resting, to know that if there was, for some reason, an indication that he wasn't breathing anymore, we would be notified right away.
And then the best diaper genie, latest model, whatever, you know, the models have gotten better as the years have gone on. So, like, if there's model 7.0, get 7.0. And if they make 8.0, get 8.0. I mean, all the features you can get on a diaper genie, that's definitely worth it.
Yeah. The other thing, this was not with baby number one, so I'll save it. I'll save it when we do a later episode. But there have been a few advances in baby technology over the years that have really made big impacts in parenting.
All right, so Jackson gets here, and we now have a baby. I remember at the hospital, round one, St. Vincent's in Birmingham is where he was born, and I remember just thinking, like, they're going to give us this child, and they're going to send us home, and nobody's coming home with us.
I know.
The nurse is not coming home with us. The doctor's not coming home with us. Did they know we don't know what we're doing? This is a human being, y'all. This is serious.
I know.
You can't just hand us a human being and say, go on home now. Like, in the soft spot, and like, oh my.
And we did the classes.
We did do the classes. Yes, everybody does the classes.
I had babysat plenty of kids before, but it still felt like, he felt so fragile.
Yes.
It felt like we are going to mess this thing up so bad. And, you know,
And for some reason, we would fumble through things, and the nurse would come in and just just handle it.
the swaddling.
The swaddling. The nurse came in and swaddles in him, and we're over there. I don't know. We're
the
over
blankets
there.
keep falling off.
We look like a 2-year-old trying to put together a 10,000 piece Lego set.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just sticking stuff places, and we can't even get the things to line up. And she comes in and she just puts it all together, and we're like, but we have to do this. And we can't do this.
Yeah.
This is not something that we know how to do.
Right.
I remember that feeling.
And I also remember having, just read Baby Wise. I do think Baby Wise gave me a lot of confidence in some things and just kind of some parameters of, okay, at least I know what I'm going for here, and it had a little chart that I could use in the hospital the first few days to kind of measure some things and keep track of some things. And so that really helped me a lot.
He screamed basically the whole time we were in the hospital.
He did.
He cried. We got very little rest.
And
there.
I didn't want to give him a pacifier because I was so afraid that was going to make his nursing, give him issues with trying to latch on and make nursing difficult.
And like the nurse walks in and just swaddles him, sticks the pacifier. We didn't have time to stop her and say, we're not doing the pacifier thing.
Right.
She just swaddles him up.
Well, it was because when he got his circumcision, they gave him a pacifier.
Yeah.
And he came back with that in his mouth, and he was quiet. And we were like, you know what?
Not taking that pacifier
We're going to let that
out.
stay.
That was like, yeah, you know what? Not so convicted about that
No,
anymore.
it'd be all right.
Let him have the pacifier.
It'll be all right. So, and then our friend Randy came to visit, and Randy came on in to see the baby. And what did he do? He touched his nose. Didn't wash his hands.
Of course, he touched his nose.
The nose. And we're like, what are you doing? Go wash your hands. And
who touches a baby's nose anyway? What's wrong with him?
I don't even know. So we gave him a hard time about that. Our time comes to an end at the hospital. We actually do have to take the baby and go home. And so we get him in his car seat. We get everything in the car. And we make the hour drive back to our house. Now,
where he screams pretty much the whole time.
That's what I was going to say. He screamed the whole way home, pretty much.
I think actually until we got to Trustful, because I remember the bumps at Trustful, and I wondered, did the bumps at Trustful put him to sleep?
Yes.
If you know anything about that part of Alabama, you know what I mean.
Potholes in the road.
The bumps at Trustful. They're not really potholes. They're the way the road was designed.
Yes.
If you know that part of the world, you know what I'm talking about, the bumps at Trustful.
Yeah.
I think the bumps at Trustful put the kid to sleep.
Yes. So that gave us a little bit of relief. Okay, he stopped screaming. He stopped crying. So we get home. We take the pictures out by the front door. We unpack everything, get inside, and, we got a baby now. And it wasn't long before he just started getting really, really fussy, and he would not eat. He would not latch on. He was very, very fussy. He was turning away, just getting really upset, really agitated. And I could tell he felt a little warm.
And my thought was, okay, back to the fact that we have no idea what we're doing. Where is the nurse? If the nurse were here, like, she would do something and he would quit being fussy and
right.
all
We're
would be
just
well.
not
We're not
swaddling him
doing it
well
the right
enough, or
way.
we're not,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I could tell he felt a little warm. So we went and got the thermometer and took his temperature. And sure enough, it was like 100.6 or something like that. And it was just enough to be classified as a fever, which I had read in all the information. This classifies as a fever. I knew it was a fever. I knew I was supposed to call the doctor. So I called the doctor and I said, hey, we just brought home our newborn and he's running a temperature, running a fever. And she asked me what the temperature was. And I told her, and she said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pack your stuff up. You're going to bring him to the hospital. We're going to do a spinal tap and we're going to check for some other things. I need you to come to the ER right now. And then she just said, now what's your name? And she starts asking me questions. And I just couldn't speak. I just froze because this woman has just told me I've got to bring my baby to the emergency room. He's going to have a spinal tap. I mean, she told me all of that over the phone.
Right.
And then starts trying to get information from me. So I just handed the phone to you. I couldn't even tell you what she had said. I couldn't even and then I remember going to the bedroom and just walking around the bedroom looking like, what do I pack in a bag to go to the ER with my new baby? And what does he need? And what do we do? And I was just so paralyzed with, I don't know what to do.
Right.
And all I could do was cry. I didn't know what to do.
And it's that thought of, she said we're going to check for these things, but in your mind, you think, well, he's got something.
Got 'em all.
He has
Yeah.
every one of those.
Right.
And so, we didn't even stay the night. I mean, we never stayed a night at
At our home, yes.
We went straight to another hospital,
different hospital.
a hospital in Gadsden, and we were there for how many days?
6 days.
6 days.
Mm-hmm.
So we are exhausted, by the way, having just had the baby. We had driven to the hospital in the middle of the night, and I think we got to the hospital like 2 or 3 a.m. And of course we'd been there, and then I pastored in the local area. So now we're at a hospital where our church members want to come check on us, and we're very thankful that they did. But it was like a constant
revolving door.
Yeah, revolving door of people coming in to check on us and to see Jackson for the first time. And so we just got no rest, and Jackson didn't get any rest because they were coming in and
I know.
testing him.
Yeah,
and,
every time he'd get good and sleep, they'd come in and prick his foot to get blood work or check his temperature or something. And
so he was fine, and by the time we got to the hospital, the fever was gone.
It was definitely lower. It was no longer a fever, but it was still a little elevated.
It wouldn't have triggered all of this
Yeah.
by the time we'd made the 15-minute drive to the hospital.
Yeah.
So it was just that one little window
We're
there.
pretty sure that Randy,
It is 100%
when he
Randy's
touched
fault.
his nose, gave him some sort of something
Right.
that caused
And
him to
it
have a fever that
caused
night.
him to have a fever.
Um,
But praise the Lord,
yeah.
it was not meningitis or any
Right.
of the other really bad things it can be at that age. And so 6 days later, we bring him home from the hospital, and all is well. So
And it was at that hospital where one of the nurses in particular taught you how to really swaddle.
Yes.
I mean, she knew how to swaddle up a baby tight, and she taught you. And from that point forward, you have been the master swaddler
I'm
in
the
our
swaddler
family.
master. I mean, and I don't need any. I mean, I can use the Velcro things. That's fine.
Yeah.
But just give me a swaddle blanket and it'll be handled.
Yeah, you're a
and
pro.
I prefer. I don't like the newfangled Velcro things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of just the traditional swaddle blanket.
You're a purist.
Yeah, I'm a purist.
Yeah.
The way that Moses was swaddled, the way that Jesus was swaddled, they wrapped him in swaddling clothes. Says nothing about Velcro.
No.
And they laid him in a manger. So I am for traditional swaddling clothes, and frankly, you should replace your baby bed with a manger.
Right.
I mean, I feel like that's the biblical way to do it.
So when we were in the hospital with Jackson the second time, and everything was looking good, but he had to have several rounds of IV antibiotics, which is what caused him to have to stay there so long. So through that process, I'm still learning how to, to nurse him and feed him and care for him and all of these things while he's there. And so at that point, I developed mastitis, which is an infection in the milk ducts. And so when a nurse came in to check on me, she noticed that I had the beginning symptoms of that. And she just instantly said, you need to address this now. You need to get a better breast pump. You need to do these things, or you're going to have surgery and have it removed, and just gave this extreme scenario of what was going to happen. And so my mom was actually there at that time, and she went out and she was like, "That is not appropriate. You should not say these things to a first time mother." You know, it totally panicked me when she jumped to the worst case scenario conclusion, which was not at all what was going to have to happen. But it was at that point that we needed,
Right.
upgrade. And so the hospital provided one while we were there, but then when we got home, it was when I needed a better one. So that answers that part of the story.
I do remember, this is probably TMI, I just do remember a lot of squeak, 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 squeak of the handheld. I just remember a
It was
lot.
very
In fact, I
laborious.
remember putting cooking oil or something on it to try to keep it from squeaking, like squeak, 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 squeak. So I know there was a significant amount of time where you did, in
It
fact,
did cut down
use-
on the
yes.
time of having to get
So,
the milk. Yeah.
but anyway, moving right along. So, so first year, so he's home.
I will say this while we're talking about funny, awkward things, because, having a baby will change you. It will totally change you. And I also remember being in the hospital that second time when we were had to go back with Jackson. And I had taken a shower and I came out and the nurse came in right at that time. And it was, when you're in the hospital and those nurses and doctors only come around so often, like you feel like you have got to
Right.
talk.
Now's your time.
If you've got a question or you want to know more information or you have a concern, you gotta say it. So I remember I had just come out of the shower and the nurse happened to walk in. And so I stopped her and we're having this entire conversation about Jackson, and she leaves. And you're just looking at me and you're like, "Babe, do you realize you don't have any clothes on right now?" I was like, "I don't know. I just feel like everything I've just been through,
Right.
like why? I just needed to know the information. She's a
Sure.
nurse. This is part of her job." And you were just baffled. You're like, "What
You
is
just had a whole
happening right
conversation
now?"
with no clothes on. So kind of moving ahead into that first year, just a few things that that I think of that were different for the first child.
Mhm.
One of them is that you don't know how long seasons are going to last, and I've tried to tell so many dads this, that you feel like, oh my goodness, this is going to last forever. This stage where he does this or he does that.
Or he won't stop doing this,
He won't
or he
stop
won't
doing
stop
that.
doing
Yeah,
that.
and it really doesn't last that long. I mean, at most, the difference in a newborn baby and a 1-year-old is just a galaxy apart. And so you think, oh wow, I don't know that I'm going to get through this, but it really isn't that long of a time period. And you just sometimes you just have to grit your teeth and bear it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, because of Baby Wise, I've always felt a little guilty talking to, especially to dads who like have children around the same time that we do. And like, I'm talking with a dad, yeah, I've got a 9-month-old, or hey, I've got a 6-month-old. And, they'll say, man, I'm just exhausted. I'm not getting any sleep. And just to be honest, like I have slept very well with all 5 of our children.
Yeah.
I've gotten plenty of sleep. You've gotten plenty of sleep. So much of that is due to Baby Wise. Some people say, well, hey, Baby Wise doesn't work on some children. We are 5 for 5, 100%. It's worked on all 5 of our children.
And when you say it's worked, you mean they've all been sleeping through the night by 3 months old. That's
3
the
months
goal of Baby Wise. Many of them it was before then, but
Yeah, and also for me, it wasn't just that, because you told me that, hey, if we do this, then by 3 months they'll be sleeping through the night, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. But it wasn't just that. It's like by 2 weeks they're sleeping in these massive chunks. They're sleeping hours at a time, and so you get your rest hours at a time, and it's like, well, you get interrupted once or twice in the night, and then you go right back to sleep. And there's none of this, I'm up all night, I just don't sleep. Any of our children that have been up all night screaming and crying, they're sick.
yeah.
There's something not right with them. And that's been, it seems like less than a handful of times
I was
that
going to
that's
say,
happened.
I think it's been a less than a handful of times, all 5 kids combined.
Right,
Like,
right. All 5 kids put together. And it's always, and it's a stomach virus
Right.
or something where they just, or some kind of rash or something like that, where they're genuinely sick.
Right.
And it's worked for all 5. And so that's a game changer. When you've had your sleep, you can deal with a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. And the other thing that Baby Wise helped me with was and it helped our family with was setting healthy boundaries as a family and as parents, and really just learning how to walk through those different developmental stages with them and what to expect in those things. I did read the book What to Expect When You're Expecting. That was
Yeah.
another preparation book that I did read that was really, really helpful as well, and they made all kind of new revisions of that too. But it was helpful to me to have some sort of system to work from, and that's just really my personality. That just works. I need a system that's proven, that's true, that I can follow behind, but also knowing that it's not completely black and white in a lot of areas. And the book does a good job explaining all of that as well. But the different seasons and they change, like you said, they change so quickly. Babies in those first months, just so much of what they need is different from month to month. They grow and they change so rapidly, and so it just really was a great tool for us and parameter for us. And then knowing that there were friends who had done that, Elizabeth being the primary one, was helpful as well. So if I had questions, I could ask.
And the other thing I would say is prioritize your marriage.
Yes.
Your marriage, because the child, here's what will happen. And if I can just speak on behalf of husbands, the child will scream for your attention, literally scream for your attention. And your husband's in a really awkward place because he loves you. And he wants to be with you. And he married you because you are his favorite person on this planet. And God's designed him to want to spend time with you. But he feels like a huge jerk if he says, hey, that baby is taking the favorite person on the planet, my favorite person on the planet. This baby has taken that person from me. And so husbands won't say that because they'll just kind of pull back, and they'll do what they know to do. They'll work more. They'll try to do more things. They'll try to, whatever their love language is. And for a lot of husbands, it's acts of service. So they'll start doing a bunch of stuff around the house, and the relationship can easily die. Mm-hmm. And mom and baby can become the emotional bond that is the center of the family. Mm-hmm. And you've got to make sure that in that first year, husband and wife are the emotional bond that's the center of that family. Mm-hmm. And it's husband and wife together bonding with the child, and not mom and child, and then dad's kind of on the side, the one that's kind of, just attached.
Yeah. And some ways
that's really important.
Yeah. And some ways that you can do that are being intentional to take date nights, being intentional to, even if it's just for a couple of hours, go out with one another and let a grandparent or a trusted person come and take care of the baby. And we strongly encourage, and this is what we have done, and it started with Jackson, taking an overnight getaway at some point within the first 6 months, just to really truly say we are going to prioritize our marriage and make sure that doesn't slip away. And do you remember what our first date night was when he was born?
I don't.
So 2 weeks in, he was 2 weeks old. We went to the Etowah Pregnancy Testing Center.
That was yes.
Banquet, and
it wasn't the banquet.
It was
like a smaller meeting.
It was, and there was a lady who was sharing her testimony of an abortion.
She had an abortion, and the regret that she had over that.
Mm-hmm. And she shared pictures. She shared
pictures of
aborted baby parts.
Babies, yes, that had been aborted.
It was not the wisest decision for us.
Right.
For
But
that
we didn't
to be,
know
but
that's
we didn't
what
know,
she was going to do.
We did not.
We just thought, hey, we get out of the house for a couple hours.
But you talk about postpartum emotions
Yeah.
and all of that, and it was the first time I'm away from my baby, and this is what I'm seeing. And so, of course, we rushed home and hugged Jackson big. And
I think it's important to stress, and you did a good job with this, a tremendous job with this. It's important to stress your baby is going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And you've got to think logically, not with emotion.
Yeah.
And your emotions will want to be in the driver's seat because this baby is so cute. You've got all the postpartum changes that are going on, and there's a lot of emotion around welcoming a new child into the home anyway. And so you've got to let those emotions are great, and you should embrace those emotions and be happy about all that and how cute the baby is and all those kind of things. But you can't make decisions that way. Yeah. And so you've got to set that to the side and then say, logically, this child is just as safe with another competent adult who knows how to care for him as he is with me.
Right.
But what's not good for that child is if my marriage slowly dies and 10 years from now, I don't know who my husband is, and we get divorced when this kid is just now starting Little League Baseball and now his parents are divorced.
Yeah.
Like, that's not healthy for the kid. Yeah. So let the kid stay with somebody that you trust, somebody who knows how to take care of babies, and then go out for dinner. go overnight. And we know couples who, I mean, they've had kids who are teenagers, and for all those years, they've never been away
Yeah,
overnight because they're afraid something might happen to the kid. It's a false sense of security.
it is.
You don't have any control. You cannot stop something from dangerous from happening to that kid, even if you're right there with that baby.
Absolutely.
And so you're free to trust the sovereignty of God, that God's in control and you're not, to choose someone who's a good caretaker and to leave that baby with that caretaker. And even if you go out and all you can do for the 2 hours that you're having dinner is think about the baby, that's okay. At least you got out of the house and you saw, hey, the baby's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And another thing we can say, I think being a few years down the road, and we've done this for couples, is you feel guilty that the baby's going to cry while you're gone. And the baby probably is going to cry while you're gone. But we have watched babies for other couples, and the baby screams for 2 hours. And you know what? That is not nearly as stressful on us as it is on that new couple.
Yeah.
Because we know they're coming back, and we're going to hand that baby off.
Right.
And so we can handle 2 hours of screaming. Your relatives who love you can handle 2 hours of screaming. You might be dealing with 12 hours of screaming a day, and you just need those 2 hours.
Yeah.
Another pro tip: noise canceling headphones. You can get the work tune headphones, anything, but put those things on. People think it's a joke. I'm not joking at all. That scream, especially for men, there's something in us that triggers all kinds of stress, and it even can make us angry. Put those headphones on, turn on some Jesus music, and just let all that go away, and it takes the noise away, and it really brings the temperature of the situation
There
down.
were several times where you were changing our kids' diapers as they were screaming at you, but you had this on and you had the noise turned up so that, you're seeing them, but
I'm just praising the
that's
Lord right there.
exactly right.
It looks like they're singing along with whatever song happens to be on the radio at the time.
That's right. But I'll also add this, that I think one of the biggest successes that I look back at our first year of parenting and see is that we were able to be on the same page together. And if we didn't agree with baby wise or not baby wise, or stay at home or not stay at home, or go out on a date or not go out on a date, if we didn't agree about those things, then each of those things could have been a huge opportunity for the enemy to divide our marriage and for us to have animosity toward one another, or for things to just fall apart. And like you said, that's not healthy for the baby. That's not healthy for us, for our family. That's not God honoring. And so really getting on the same page about everything and making those decisions together and agreeing with those things. And in particular, the baby wise thing, like you took the time to read that book and you took the time to see, okay, yeah, this looks like a good idea. Let's do this. And then in the times when I was having a hard time with it, you were the voice in my head saying, he's going to be okay. We're going to go in there in 5 minutes to check on him. He's going to be okay. You're the one that helped me do that hard thing at the beginning. And if you hadn't been telling me those things, I probably would have thrown a lot of it out the window. And so having somebody in your corner, like working together as a team, saying these are the things that, we're going to do, and we're going to hold each other to that, and we're going to help each other with that. It made all the difference.
One of the things that you did really well is I always felt like I was more important to you than Jackson. Now, of course, he's got to have what he's got to have when he's got to have it. But I always felt like you prioritized me as much as you possibly could. And I really had prepared myself mentally that wasn't going to be the case. And I kind of just thought, you know what? I've enjoyed 5 years of my wife giving, her attention to me. And I thank God for that. And things are just going to be different now, and it'll be okay. And, other guys get over it, and I'll get over it. And because I honestly, if I can just be honest, I've seen so many women who just turn all their attention to their children, and their husband is an appendage to the family. And I just thought, well, I don't think it'll be exactly like that, but it's also not, she's not going to give me a ton of attention, and that's okay. But you did such a good job saying this child is a part of the family, and you gave me a lot of attention and a lot of time. And you would put Jackson down for his time alone by himself on his little playmat with his little toys. And if he cried that whole time, it was still mine and your time. It didn't interrupt our time. And that freed me up to it freed me up to not choose between feeling loving towards my son and feeling like something was being taken away from me. Like I never had those conflicting emotions, and so that's something that you did really well. And I would and only ladies can make that decision. Husbands, you cannot come to your wife and say, "Hey, you got to do a better job of giving me attention." There's so many reasons you can't do that. So it's just a decision that the ladies have to make. And so it made it easy to say, well, let's do this together, and let me encourage you and support you. I know you remember that first night. So we hit this kind of speed bump where Jackson was waking up. I think it was like 3 a.m. And it was the same time. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. And according to the charts and graphs, he was not supposed to be waking up at 3 a.m. And so we read the book, and it says, hey, we're supposed to let him cry for 15 minutes before we go in and do anything. And, that's really hard. So for a couple of nights, he would cry. We would go in there, check on him, and he'd go back to sleep. And we thought, we don't know, maybe he'll get over this. Well, he didn't. So we decided tonight's the night. We're going to give it 15 minutes. And so he starts crying, 3 a.m., right on time. And we thought, all right, here we go. We kind of psyched ourselves up for listening to 15 minutes of our baby crying desperately for us. Do you remember how long he cried?
It was like 3 minutes.
It was like 3 minutes. So 3 minutes
we put a
he
timer
cried.
on it.
And I'm not even sure he was fully awake. I think he might have been sleep crying. But anyway, he was like 3 minutes, and we're watching it, and then he just kind of fades off, goes back to sleep. And that was it.
It never happened again.
Never happened again.
know.
And we had gone through like several nights, I think maybe a week or more, where he was waking up at 3 o'clock on the dot. And once we stopped going in there to check on him, he just went right back to sleep, and that was it. But I remember watching that clock going, okay, we can do this. Oh, wow. It took 3 minutes. But now if we weren't looking at the clock, that 3 minutes can seem like 30
forever.
minutes.
Yeah.
So, and then just a reminder to moms and dads out there, babies can't do very much. Sometimes I think, look, I have no evidence to back this up other than 5 children. I think sometimes they just cry because they're bored.
Yeah.
I really do think that they go, I can't do it. I can't play basketball. I can't play football. I can't even really watch TV. I can't sit up. I can't roll over. I can barely move my toes. What am I going to do? I wonder what it would feel like to just scream. And I think they just scream.
Do you remember we had a missionary friend from India named Justice Benwell, and he came to visit when Jackson was a baby, and Jackson got to crying one day. And he told us that his mother taught him that babies, when they cry a lot, they're actually just exercising their lungs to become opera singers. Jackson's actually a very good singer.
He is a very good singer,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
sure.
I think that.
And really, most of our kids are.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you go, oh, well, y'all are horrible people. You let your babies cry all the time. It's really not that much. You just, the basic thing is you don't run every time they cry.
Right. You
and
learn
pick them up.
You learn to assess their cries
Yeah.
and to learn which cries mean which things, and you act accordingly to that. But you don't allow the baby to dictate what needs to happen in the situation. You assess it as a parent, and you make the best decisions.
And you can do, if you have a baby that's, say, even 3 months old, even at 3 months old, if you want to do a little experiment and that baby starts crying, just walk into the room, and you'll notice when you walk in the room, he'll start to stop crying. Like, hey, I got you. So what does that mean? He's not in terrible pain. He's not so distraught and so hungry that all he can think about is the hunger in his little tummy. He just knows that if he cries, you'll come get him out of that crib. And, you're the parent. You know how long he needs to be in that crib, and you know when he needs to be out of that crib. He's 3 months old. What does he know?
Yeah.
He does not know how long he needs to sleep. He doesn't know how long he needs to lay in the crib. He doesn't know how often he needs to eat. He doesn't know those things.
Yeah.
But you can know those things, and you can from the very beginning say, I know what's best for you, and regardless of your response, your behavior, as your parent, I'm going to determine what's best for you, and I'm going to give you what you need, not necessarily what you want and what you cry for. So
one of the other big components of going from none to one is thinking through the discipline part. And so
Yes.
disciplining that first child can be really, really hard. And I'll never forget the moment when we had to discipline Jackson physically for the first time.
we gave him his first spanking.
Gave him his first spanking.
Discipline is so much more than spanking, but we have spanked all of our children. Our motto is early, hard, and often. so that by the time they're 6, there are so few of our kids that I think it's twice that I have spanked a child older than 6 in our house, because it's about establishing authority and
Right.
who's in charge and who the boss is and all that kind of stuff. So if you do that at early ages, you don't really have to do that, later on.
Yeah, and so that came into play, during that first year, toward the end of his first year, and it wasn't handled the best, but it.
Oh, I think it was perfect.
So Derek
I
spanked him.
was determined to be the first person to spank.
He kept going.
I wanted to make it clear that I will lead in this
Yeah.
spiritually, because it's not easy to do.
It's not.
For all the tough talk about spanking, if it's easy to spank your children, something's wrong with you. And it is not easy for me to, at any point, it's never been, you know what, I'm really looking forward to this. So if you think that way, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
But so for Jackson, it was just clear. We had defined when would we spank, and we had said when we see willful disobedience,
That's right.
when he knows he's doing something he's not supposed to do, and he's doing it in a defiant way.
Yeah.
He doesn't care that we've set that rule. Then and that comes much earlier than you realize.
It does. They know.
They know, and they clearly know. So
And the mobility goes hand in hand with it, I
yes.
think. When they're able to get to the thing that they've
Right.
been dreaming
that's
they could
gotten
do.
all of our kids.
Yes.
When they get mobile,
Yes.
they start to go places they're not supposed to go.
Yeah, so he was going towards something that he clearly knew he wasn't
It was a
supposed to be
vent
touching.
on the ground,
Yes.
and we had multiple times gone and pulled him
no.
away and said no, and
Yeah.
pulled him away and said no, and he crawls right back to it. And it was the look. It was I'm going to look back at you. I'm going to acknowledge that I know I'm not supposed to go over here, and I'm going to give you the look to tell you, frankly, I don't care. I want to go over there. That was what got him his first spanking.
Yes, and so you come over, you give him a little pop on the leg, and you walk back around the counter to the sink where you were in the kitchen, and he looks up, and it's just me standing there. So
And I didn't mean for that to happen.
No, but
I
it
did not
did.
mean for that to happen, but that is how it happened.
It did, and so he's
The
crying.
look on his face was a look of absolute betrayal.
Yeah.
Now, with other children, it's been different. With Jackson, it was a look of like, you've broken my heart.
It was.
How could you possibly do that to me? Other children have looked at us like, who gave you the right?
That's true.
But this look was like, I can't, my heart is broken that these two people have done this to me.
Yes.
And I happen to be on the other side. By now, I'm on the other side of the kitchen island, and there you are.
And so before I can even intervene or not, you come around and you scoop him up and you actually say, "What did Mama do to you?" Now, it was really a joke between
Sure.
you and me.
Yeah,
and-
because
and
he
you were very
was
consistent beyond that
just a few
point
months
in
old.
disciplining. But
So
but it was funny.
it was funny.
He was very confused at what had happened, and
Yeah.
I was defenseless. There wasn't much I could
But
say.
I tell you what, he thought twice before he crawled over
He
to that
did.
vent again.
He did.
So
The only other thing I really remember vividly about this season was Heimlich. We had to do the baby Heimlich on him. So we really were thrown into the fire with a few
were.
things with our first.
biter biscuits.
Those biter teething biscuits.
Teething, they were supposed to be safe, and no, we know actually. I don't think they make them anymore.
Yeah.
But we know several parents who had the same issue,
Yeah.
where we had to do the Heimlich. Now, we had to do the Heimlich on another kid.
No, we had to do the Heimlich on Jackson twice.
I was thinking there was another kid we did it on.
Maybe Marshall.
Where we were like, we're like still having the conversation, and we're doing the Heimlich like as we're still talking about. Yeah, I really do think Auburn's going to go deep into the tournament this time. We got a baby upside down, patting him on the back, and people are horrified. And we're like, oh yeah, well, I mean, we've
been down
there,
this
done
road.
that. We'll get it out.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But with Jackson, I mean, that first time, it is panic
It is.
city, and it should be. It's a
is.
very serious thing.
Yeah.
Choking is, and so it was panic. I remember just absolute panic, but then also saying, "Hey, we've got to stay calm. We've got to do what we need to do here." And and I remember that biter biscuit shooting out across the floor, and then we threw away all the teething biscuits,
did.
biter biscuits, whatever they were called. So.
Yeah. But we survived.
We did.
From
we
none
made it
to
that,
one?
From none to one. And when we come back next episode, we'll talk about from 1 to multiples. We may do 1 to 2, but we may just do 1 to multiples because that's a big change too. It's
is.
not as big of a change as none to one, but it is a big change. So we'll come back and talk about that.